What's going on, everyone? I'm here with California Lewis, and today we are walking among the remains of the old tent city here in Modesto, California. It used to be known as Brooks Beard Park, and at one time it used to be a wonderful little park along the river here where kids would come and play on the jungle gym and the grass fields, and they even had baseball diamonds. Well, once the homeless were given permission to turn this into a tent city, it no longer became an environment for children to come and play at. It became the homeless tent city, and at this tent city you were seeing homeless killing each other, setting their tents on fire, and in some cases the actual facilities themselves that they were needing to use. And this tent city was strictly a volunteer-run operation. However, due to all of the violence and the destruction of property, it became very clear to the city of Modesto that this is going to turn into a huge liability. And so the homeless were moved out of here. And now that we walk among the remains of this once beautiful park that has been turned into a shanty town that has now been abandoned, you can still smell the urine and the feces out here. You still see the remains of the destruction. And
several months later. And so now we're going to show you where they've moved to and what American refugees look like. I don't know if you guys have seen the very popular HBO miniseries Chernobyl, and maybe I'm being a bit over dramatic here, but the picturesque view of what Central California looks like in these types of abandoned shanty towns reminds me of what I saw in that television show. You even have the horrifying industrial landscape in the background with swings that you can still see going up and down in a ghostly way with nobody sitting in them, nobody swinging in them, no children playing, no nothing. This place is a permanent contamination zone, and I don't see any recovery for it anytime soon.
What California Lewis was saying is rather poignant. He's too young to remember, but 20 years ago, a park like this would be in very much use given the summer hours, the summer heat, it being close to the river. But now you're talking about an area that's been totally abandoned. It's no longer useful. It's been tainted, polluted, and now it's just left here to waste.
It's one of those things where you can't let this population in their current state, before they've been rehabilitated, have dominion over any particular location, because it will turn into a mini fiefdom. It will turn into Lord of the Flies, which is why we see the stabbings and the fires and the murders and the sexual assault and all the other horrifying things that happen in these types of locations.
Which is why you're having to see the tent city have security paid for, to have sanitation paid for, to have the porta potties paid for. This is a huge fiscal load that the city is picking up, and by extension, taxpayers. And I really cannot communicate through this screen just how foul it smells out here. There is a funk. There is a bodily fluid funk out here that persists. Very sad. The destruction of the park and the facilities is so bad, they've put up fences so that people can't even come down here and enjoy the park, even if they wanted to. But knowing what we know, we wouldn't want to come down here and stay that long just because of how much it's been polluted and destroyed and how bad it smells. But think about that. This is a taxpayer-funded park that can no longer be used due to the actions of city employees, city leaders, and the homeless of the Central Valley. What's interesting on this map is that it has points of interest, where you might like to go, but what I don't see on here is the tent city. So right now we are walking up a small hill so we can get a good vantage point. It's about 1 o'clock this Tuesday afternoon. And, over the weekend we had triple-digit weather. up near 108 degrees. So when you're walking in 99-degree weather, it's quite tolerable. Hang tight, guys. We're going to show you what's going on down here in the Central Valley of California. All right, everyone. We've reached the top of this small peak so that we can show you what's happening behind us. That is the new Hoovervilles. Instead of the homeless being at the park now, the city of Modesto has moved them all literally under the bridge. Here you can see the whole park in its entirety. And it's quite a bit of land that they've parked all these tents onto. Private security guards out here enforcing the law. But this is the reality in California. I mean, this is what you would call a Hooverville. If this was across the Atlantic in Somalia, this would be called a refugee camp. And every day we have more and more homeless arriving, homeless Americans no less, to tent cities like this all the time, while Americans themselves are constantly berated and proselytized about how we need to house illegal immigrants and people coming here under dubious reasons. And again, this park is being funded by the city of Modesto. You've got security guards down there. You've got porta potties and hand washing stations. You've got an air-conditioned office, probably for administrative purposes. And this is all to prevent, supposedly, what happened last time, which was homeless people being stabbed to death, fires breaking out, and infrastructure being destroyed. But the bigger question is, how long is this going to be in play? How long is this tent city going to be around before we see more issues like we saw before at Brooks Beard Park? Is this going to be a permanent facility going forward? Is this something that Americans are going to be seeing in every one of their cities? And the statistic that no one wants to talk about with regards to the homeless population in the Central Valley is the types of criminals that are in these homeless camps. And what do I mean by that? There are many, many homeless men that are sexual deviants, sexual criminals, sexual predators, and in these camps, you have children running around with these predators. You're talking about children already in a precarious situation, being in the immediate area of people who could compromise them, attack them, sexually abuse them, or even kill them. What you're seeing in California is the homeless service providers being turned into a homeless industrial complex where money comes in from the state, the city, the county, and given to these homeless service providers, and none of it is accountable. It can't be taken back, and more often than not, it's abused. And what happens is these homeless service providers, even though they're not showing any profit on the books, they themselves are profiting in their pocketbooks, and they're wearing fine Italian loafers and fine Italian socks. They've got all the new electronics, but one thing they can't figure out is how to get these homeless people into permanent housing or to become a responsible, productive citizen. In California, what's happening is that they are subsidizing bad behavior, poor choices, and drug use. Meanwhile, the people that are working every day, punching a clock, they are being taxed into oblivion. that was eye-opening. What are your thoughts on it, California Lewis, after visiting that site?
Living it up at the Hotel California. That's what it's like. This state is incredibly two-faced, which is what the Eagles song Hotel California was originally about. It's about how on the one hand you have the glamour, you have the businesses, you have the extraordinary wealth in this state that's unseen in all of history. And then on the other hand, you have the worst crippling economic conditions for the poor that the world has ever seen. And this is going to cause harm to the state, even if they clean up the problem. The pollution on the ground that these people cause is going to make it so nothing ever grows there. That's how horrifying it was, in my opinion.
I think what really kind of opened my eyes about this facility was just the immense amount of trash that is being allowed to come into the camp, and how this is the only answer that California has for these compromised individuals, is just a place for them to go with all of their stuff and to continue what they have been doing until either they stroke out, overdose, get stabbed, or die in a tent fire.
United Nations, if you're listening, there are children in these camps that are in danger. There are children who are going to have harm done to their psyche for the rest of their life. And then there are children who are probably going to get abused either physically or sexually. You need to intervene, world. The world needs to intervene in this problem. This is unacceptable that anyone should live in these conditions.
Also, while we were driving through, we saw Stanislaus probation going through somebody's tent. We saw a handful of signs posted that said, "Stay back, the dog bites." That was a whole lot of reality for a Tuesday afternoon. So anyway, guys, that's all that we have today. What are your thoughts? Rate, comment, subscribe.